Alright, now let's take a look at the layer brush. This one is interesting because it, as you can imagine, adds a new layer of geometry to your object. But there's one thing you have to keep in mind. If I now use the standard settings and paint on this object, you can see it's looking kind of weird. And that's because this layer brush does not really work with dynamic topology enabled. So if you want to use this, you have to disable dynamic topology. And then we have two new options here. One is a height and one is a persistent and set persistent base. What this means, I show you in a second. Now let's, without dynamic topology, let's paint this area, and you can see when I don't release my brush, it is creating this new layer to a certain height. And this height you can define using this height slider. If you just want to add a lower layer, then set this value down. So, and right now this acts like if I release my mouse and go on and sculpt above another layer, you can see it adds a layer also above the layer I've painted before. So in many cases this could be useful, but if you don't want to have this, you can set this persistent value. That means it will use this mesh and only adds information to a certain height. Also, if I release my pen or mouse and paint again, you can see that it always keeps in the same height. So, and if you have painted some layers or changed anything, you can basically reset the persistent base. So I want this new model to be the new persistent base. I click on this button, and if I now add the layer, it will add the new layer above all this previous painted surface. So I get this brush. I didn't have used this much in the past, but I think it's pretty useful if you want to create something like an armor or some hard surface things on your object. So I think in some cases this brush can be really useful. And that's basically it with the layer brush. What the heck we are doing with this poor cat, man.